the emergency evacuation procedure. Thanks.
A very warm welcome this afternoon to our ESCOM teams and to all our executives and our guests. Quick brief in terms of our evacuation procedure specifically for this area. There's two evacuation routes, two at the back, two at the front of our stage. During the evacuation, there will be a PA announcement made for everyone to evacuate. I trust that all our guests are signing on the attendance register for roll call purposes. During the evacuation process, we'll then follow through an announcement. Please evacuate through the specific routes. The specific evacuation wardens will assist us during this process. There's two evacuation points that's going to be made use of. One downstairs, as most of our guests came through to at our swimming pool area. The second one will be shown or will be guided through our process with our evacuation wardens. Should there be anybody that needs assistance during this process, we will gladly assist. Myself and the staff will assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee, and good afternoon to all of you in the house, ladies and gentlemen. So we have invited you today as ESCOM to our annual results. However, it's our performance of the year ended 31st March 2024. That is the period between 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024. My name is Daphne Mukwena, and I'll be the moderator for the session. On stage, I've got members of the panel. I'll start on my left-hand side with the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. And next to him, it is our Group Chief Executive, Professor Dan Marugani. Next to him is our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Caleb Kasim. Next to him is our Group Executive Generation, Ntate Beki Kumalo. And lastly, we've got our Group Executive, Ntate Monde Bai. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have invited you today to this session as an opportunity to share our insights on our financial and operational performance and to how are we going to address the key challenges and also outline our plans for the future. So this is a session which is a hybrid, meaning that we've got other colleagues that have connected via or virtually. And amongst us as well, we are joined by our EXCO team and our board members. And also within this room and virtually, we are joined by other stakeholders, media, our customers, organized business, as well as investors and the members of the public, of course. So without wasting any time, may I invite the chairman of the board. I forgot to introduce him, Ntate Mteto Nyati. He has joined us. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us in person, but he has made efforts to join us virtually. So he will be making his remarks and introducing the minister. Over to you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Daphne, for that. And you are forgiven for forgetting me. Honorable Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Ramokgopa, executive board members, board members of ESCOM EXCO Committee, ESCOM Executive Forum, ESCOM employees, members of the media, the South African citizens, To our ultimate shareholders, good afternoon and welcome to our annual results presentation. Right from the word go, I would like to address the question of why we are announcing these results 9 months late. Can you please show us the opening slide for me, please? So, in terms of the reasons why, in terms of the reasons why we are late, can you move the slide forward, please? Forward again. One more. Thank you so much. So the reasons why we are late is primarily 3 reasons. The first one is the issue that we had with our online vending system. And the second reason has to do with the NTCSA unbundling. And the third reason has to do with reportable irregularities. On the first point of the online vending system, what we picked up was that there was a collusion that was suspected and which we had to investigate between ESCOM staff and illicit operators who were busy working on our prepaid ecosystem. And in order for us to be able to quantify the size of all of this, we had to make sure that we do an investigation on this matter. And indeed, we did that. And the forensic company is currently working on this to find the root causes of it. And we are now at a point where we at least have a sense of the magnitude of the problem. And also, we are working towards making sure that we put together mechanisms that will help us to address this problem going forward. But this was a major issue that really took a lot of time for us to unpack and get to a point where we are comfortable to be coming out in public and be able to say there are measures that we're putting in place, there are controls that we have strengthened, and also we will be making sure that the recommendations that are coming out from the forensic company that is working on this are executed. So that was really the first issue that delayed us. The second one is related to the unbundling of NTCSA. And here is largely issues related to the fact that when you are moving into a new space, you have to look at the ways of working between the 2 organizations. And some of the items that we picked up early on was the issue of the take-on balance, and this entity became independent. And there were a number of discussions that happened between the ESCOM holdings and also the NTSA board and together with management. And those have now been resolved, the issues of the opening balance. There was also an issue around the upstream guarantee, which NTSA had to undertake in order for the lenders to allow us to do the unbundling. As part of the exercise of the audit process, we had to value this upstream guarantee, and this piece of work was done by an external company, which finalized this work about a week ago. Again, this is something that delayed us quite a bit. And last but not least, related to NTSA, was that immediately you unbundle an entity, more especially an entity that was making profits, that has direct bearing on the assessed loss asset that we were carrying. So sizing of that impact is something that we had to work on, and we found that the impact was about 36.6 billion rands. So that's the the second reason why we were late. And the third one, were under the normal auditing process, the auditors came up with a number of reportable irregularities, and we had to make sure that those reportable irregularities that were raised by the external auditors were addressed. The key points that really I would like to make around this slide is the fact that all in all, we continue to have a challenge within ESCOM, a challenge of having weak internal controls. And these are the items that the board, which met about 2 days ago, and that the board has sent a very strong message to management that this is an area, as we move forward, that we have to make sure that we strengthen. Next slide, please. So here on this particular slide, the key points that I really like to make here is the fact that as an entity, as ESCOM, we are very, very clear about our purpose and our mission in life. Our mission is to power growth sustainably, powering the growth of South Africa and that of the region. Unfortunately, if you look over the past 10 years or so, we have not been living this purpose. In fact, we have been doing exactly the opposite. So where we are coming from and the results of FY24 as well are a reflection of the state that this company was at a state where the company was dysfunctional, resulting in a negative contribution when it comes to the economic growth of the country. So looking now specifically at the performance of the company in FY24, some of the key indicators here, negative indicators, the fact that we had 329 days of load shedding. We're not proud of this, and this is the highest days of load shedding that we've ever had as a company. We hope that this is something that is going to never happen again. But this is what happened last year. And at the back of that as well, we had to spend in terms of diesel, about 34 billion rand. And this was largely because we were doing a lot of maintenance. And to minimize the impact of the maintenance that we were doing at the time, we had to make sure that we use OCGTs. And on average, we saw the load factor of these OCGTs over 50%. And ordinarily, they have to be around 6% or below. So we can see that they really relied in that financial year on the usage of OCGTs. We also saw a loss before tax of about 26 billion rand. The municipal area debt escalated to 74 billion rand. And overall, as I've already mentioned, that the key elements that are continuing to worry us is the fact that we continue to have weak internal controls that are leading to matters whereby we have repeat audit findings. So what we have seen though in the current financial year, the first 6 months of this year, we're starting to see the benefits of the work that we have done in FY24. The performance this current financial year has improved quite a lot. We've had, as many of you have experienced, I don't have to tell you this, no load shedding. In the first 6 months, we had 250 days of no load shedding. And in terms of savings on the diesel spend, there was a 12 billion rand of savings. And we expect at the end of this current financial year to be turning a profit of over 10 billion rand. This is going to be a major swing from the negative position that we exited FY24 with. And for a number of years, and this company has not been delivering profits. And we're looking forward to a position where we can continue to contribute positively and maintain and sustain this profit position. Next slide, please. So as this board, one of the things that we did as we were appointed in 2022, October 2022, we decided that instead of running around and trying to fight fires, we have to take a step back and look at what were the systemic issues that were facing Eskom. We know that many of the people were worried about load shedding. Yes, we also were, but our intention as the board was to make sure that our interventions that are going to be putting this company on a sustainable path. And that meant that we had to address multiple issues that were facing the business. And we came up with a number of systemic issues that we will be addressing over a number of years. And these were grouped under three categories. One operational, second one financial, third one sustainability. On the operational one, the systemic issues that we found were the unreliability of the generation plan, and that resulted in poor performance. And we also saw that the grid had constraints, resulting in the fact that a number of renewables capacity could not be put online. And that was the second systemic issue. And third issue was an internal, largely a people-related issue, where we had a dysfunctional organizational culture. In many ways, managers that were not managing, leaders that were not leading, lack of discipline, not having low staff morale, and the inability to drive controls within the organization. All of these fall under the operational systemic issues. On the financial issue side, the items that we identified were the weak balance sheet, the fact that we're having tariffs that were not reflective of cost, and of course, we are in a country where we continue to have people that are not paying for the services that are buying. In some cases, not just people, but also big organizations that are not paying for the services that they are consuming. And the third area is around sustainability. If you look at all of the developed world, unbundled have changed the business model of the utilities, and unbundled and separated distribution from generation and from transmission, and allowed competition to be out there so that we could be able to drive to improve the service, at the same time to drive down the cost. In our country, we were a bit late in terms of doing this, and we as a board, together of course with management, were focusing on making sure that we're driving unbundling of this entity. And the transition into new clean energy, again, that's been very slow coming, and it is one of those areas where we are moving fast, and having a clear view as management on how we can make sure that we participate in renewables as Eskom. The prevention of fraud and corruption, it is something that continues to be within Eskom, and it is something that we have to continue to focus on and link again to the internal controls that we have to strengthen. So for all of these systemic issues, we have come up with interventions. I am not going to be going one by one around those interventions. The reason really I wanted to paint a picture of all the systemic issues is that there's a lot that needs to be done in Eskom. It's not just about load shedding. We need to be addressing all of these points, and we are. And management has taken the lead in addressing these issues. So with that, then I would like to pause here and introduce our Honorable Minister, who is going to be giving us the opening remarks. The Minister has been very, very instrumental in helping us to be where we are as a business, where we are talking now almost 9 months of no load shedding. It is the partnership that we have had. I would say it's unprecedented, the kind of relationship that we have built with the shareholder, where we're working, we're aligned on things, we're able to have tough conversations. When he has to deliver those tough messages, he delivers those tough messages to us. When we have to push back on certain things, we push back. And that's the kind of relationship that we certainly need in order to get our business to be in a good place. So with that, Minister, I would like to welcome you and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mteto. Let me take the opportunity to extend my own and sincere greetings to Dr. Mteto and your esteemed members of the board, and also my most profuse greetings to the Group Chief Executive Officer of ESCOM, Mr. Marukani, and a team of competent and patriotic professionals who make up the entirety of your team, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the media. I just want to make a few general observations, and the rest of the articulation, of course, will come from the ESCOM team. So the first point to be made is that although we stand here coming to interrogate and examine the performance of ESCOM using a narrow lens of the financials of ESCOM, it should not be lost on us that this is part of the totality of the efforts of government to ensure that first we are able to resolve the problem of load shedding, hitherto considered intractable, but thanks to the leadership of both the board and EXCO of ESCOM, they've been able to illustrate that indeed we've got the capacity and capability in the country to address what essentially is a challenge of existential proportions. Of course, if you had to use any metric from socio-economic impact to the, if you like, the livelihoods of people in this country, I think was beginning to undermine our ability to achieve our objectives as codified in the national development plan. And of course, this work of ESCOM contributes in large part to the realization of the Energy Action Plan, which is a comprehensive articulation by government on how we're going to resolve and attend to the challenges presented by load shedding. And just a reminder that that Energy Action Plan has got 5 outcomes, and really ESCOM is responsible for the first outcome, and that outcome is about fixing ESCOM itself. So the Generation Recovery Plan, it's a very important tool, and we know that is a sharp tool that has been used by ESCOM to respond to the requirements of that outcome number 1. So I thought it's important that there's that degree of appreciation in relation to what is before us and also the bigger picture. And then the second general observation is the chair has made the point. There is a relationship between operational performance and also your financial performance. So as the chair has indicated, the period under review, we witness the highest intensity of load shedding measured in the number of hours that the households were experiencing load shedding, and also the number of days that we have experienced load shedding. I think about 13.9 terawatt-hours in that period. So that has had a devastating impact, not just on the economy. As the numbers will show, it has a significant adverse impact on the financial performance of ESCOM. So you can't generate revenue if you are unable to provide the electricity. So there's that correlation. And then the third observation is that the 2024, with all its challenges, you will see in the numbers that it represents a point of inflection. What do I mean by that is that all the matrices, barring one, are moving in the right direction. And as the chair has indicated, the sustenance of no load shedding. You can see it's a perfect illustration of the fact that this intervention is resilient and is also able to absorb any kinds of catastrophes like we've experienced in Malta most recently. The team has built sufficient headroom to be able to absorb the kind of failures without necessarily resorting to load shedding. So I thought that it is important that we have that appreciation. Having said all of this, I think it is important that notwithstanding the explanation of the chair on the delay in the submissions of the audited financial statement, I still have to say the following. That it is worrying that the financial statements are delayed, because remember, we carry an additional obligation to the South African people to ensure that there's transparency, there's accountability, and then there are rules of the game. Also, from a parliamentary process, the expectation is that we should have submitted these audited financial statements much earlier. We had to write to the Speaker of the Assembly just to ask for condonation, and that condonation was granted. What that does is it denies parliamentarians, the elected representatives of our people, to interrogate the numbers and also help us in fashioning how best to improve the situation going into the future, to hold all of us accountable. First, the executive authority in the form of myself as the shareholder, and of course the shareholder representative, but also the collective of ESCOM. So I want to say that I want to express, if like our most profuse apology. I did convey this to the Speaker, but also to the South African people, that it has taken so much time for us to release this, notwithstanding what the reasons are. I think part of ensuring that we're starting on a new slate, we are pursuing a different path. It is important that from a governance perspective, we are also able to keep to what the requirements and the expectations are. What has become apparent through the process of the tariff application, which was placed before the South African public for their own comments, an independent process that is run by NEXA. One of the things that have come out is the need for ESCOM to be a bit more transparent, accountable. And I think that this delay just undermines and soils, if you like, that commitment, the social contract we have with our people to ensure that we are able to release the results on time. And I'm saying, notwithstanding the most valid points that the chair has made, one of the things that we have impressed upon the leadership of ESCOM from the board and also management is to ensure that we keep to those timelines. We do everything possible so that we are able to rebuild, if you like, the credibility of the ESCOM in the eyes of the many. So our responsibility is not just on ensuring that we keep the lights on, but we are able to account for each and every cent we send, and we know the disproportionate impact that the cost of electricity is having on the cost of living of everyone, in particular low-income households. Just on the reflection of the results, I really want to congratulate the team led by Dr. Mteto and the esteemed board for the kind of operational performance we are seeing going into the future. So the chair just illustrated, provided us with a window of what is in fact our lived experience in the current financial year, that the numbers are looking up from an EAP perspective. The reliance on diesel is coming down, and that has got an impact on the amount of money that we are using in procuring diesel. And of course, over time, it's going to have an impact on the cost of electricity. The number of no load shedding days, we are not celebrating that, we are simply taking account of the fact that we're coming from a very difficult past, but we must normalize not having a load shedding. So we're getting into that mode, and it's thanks to the work of management, in particular led by Mr. Maropan. Like I said, there's a correlation between that operational performance and financial performance. As the chair has illustrated now, the projection is that if we keep on in the manner that we are doing for the remainder of the financial year, it's going to result in a profit after tax of about 10 billion. And if you look at the losses that are registered today, so essentially for the period under review, it's a swing of close to, I think, 65 billion rands. You'll see when the numbers gets to be presented before us. So I think that this represents a steady recovery, a confirmation that the generation recovery plan is working, and by definition the energy action plan is working. The second part here is around the leadership stability, the fact that the board has been able to appoint, confirm the new group chief executive officer in the form of Mr. Marokane, and even before his arrival, the board was very aggressive in ensuring that we have the head of generation, Mr. Numa, the kind of stabilization we have experienced on the generation side, and the fact that he has been able to appoint competent men and women to run our power stations, and you can see the kind of performance that we are seeing. I think this makes the organization future-proof, and I'm sure with the kind of skills that you are going to attract into ESCOM, is going to take us into a different orbit. So we really want to congratulate you. And then the third aspect in relation to just the general observation, if you like, the soft issues are important in addition to the hardcore engineering issues, the hardcore numbers. I think the soft issues are important. The fact that the morale is buoyant, and I think that the fact that the team has been able to introduce a dispensation of performance-related incentives. We are beginning to see intra-station, if you like, competition, which is healthy, augurs well for the EAF going into the future. I think is something exceptional. And then just the last 3 points I want to make. The first one is that there's a need for us to focus on customer service. I think the experience during this transition of KRN, the issues around the updating of the meters have surfaced a number of issues, at least from my position when I go to visit the various ESCOM customer care centers. So you can see that there's a gulf between ESCOM and the customer, and one of the things that we have registered, and I know is receiving urgent attention on behalf of management, is to ensure that we are customer-centric, customer-oriented, so that we remain credible in the work that we are doing, and we are able to build that social compact. There's an appreciation from the customers that when you go to ESCOM, you are going to get the kind of assistance that is required. The second one is a point that the chair has raised, and I am lamenting that point, and I think it's an issue that requires urgent attention. I mean, the fact that we have been able to surface 2.1 million customers who have not been paying. Out of this exercise, that was whittled down to about 1.7 million. I guess that it's a moving target. It's just an illustration, perhaps, of the failures of controls. I think it's important that ESCOM must invest a lot of energies in addressing that. So the issues of cyber security, undermining the guardrails that protect, if you like, ESCOM from those who want to attack it, cyber control, very important, but also internally. There will always be, an organization of this size, 40,000 plus people, elements that are helping on undermining, if you like, the excellent work that is done by the critical mass of the men and women of ESCOM, competent, diligent, patriotic, and very honest. They are trying to undermine that. And I think what is worrying here is the recurring nature of some of the findings. We have registered that with the management, and I think that with the renewed management, if you like, renewed mandate, the focus now of ensuring that the governance receive attention, and of course is going to help us to ensure that these matters are not recurring. And then the last point I want to make as part of my opening remark is I think there's an existential problem that is facing ESCO. So the chair shared with us the period under review, the municipal debt ballooned to 74 billion. If you were to stretch it to now, as I stand before you, it's sitting at about 95 billion. So we have seen a swing of 20 billion increase on municipal debt. On average, it's increasing by about 3 billion. What that does, if it doesn't receive the necessary attention, is to erode all the gains, subtract everything that positive that has come about as a result of the fiscal support, part of which gets to be translated into equity, the loans based on the performance, and ESCOM is performing across all matrices, meeting those obligations and requirements as prescribed by National Treasury. But the one area that requires attention is that of a municipality. And what we know now is that the rate of increase, if continues unabated, and all evidence suggests that it's going to continue unabated. It's a function of a multiplicity of reasons, and perhaps when we do questions and answers I can elaborate, suggests that this is an existential problem. And in fact, it's not an ESCOM problem. That's the point I want to leave with you. It's a sovereign problem. Because someone much later has to pay for this. And of course, it will be left to the diligent customer because it's going to find its way in the tariff application and/or is going to require some fiscal support. And what that means is that the taxpayer then is overburdened. So the taxpayer, those who are diligent paying for their electricity, there's going to be an additional requirement that you must bail out others who chooses to be a delinquent. And I'm talking about those who can afford but choose not to pay. I'm separating them from indigent household. It's an area that requires attention. And that is not for ESCOM's consideration alone. That is a consideration of the executive authority. ESCOM does not have the instrument of credit control like all other municipalities are having. They can disconnect a household, they can disconnect an industrial user. ESCOM is not in a position, or it's undesirable for ESCOM to switch off any of the metros, any of the municipalities, because you are devastating the economy. So that instrument does not exist for ESCOM. Or if it does exist, it's a blunt instrument, because the consequences of that intervention are greater than the instrument itself. So that's why I make the point that it's a sovereign problem, and we have agreed with ESCOM, the chair, on how best to address this. Once this intervention gets to be approved by the board, I have made the commitment that by the first quarter of next year, I'll announce what these interventions are. You've seen us in Mfuleni, intervention in Johannesburg, interventions in Bitsobota. The latest one was Tukuluho municipalities. We've gone to Tshwane. But what we know is that municipalities are not in a position to meet these obligations, and therefore that debt is going to spiral. The other thing that we know is that the municipal debt relief, as articulated and introduced by National Treasury, does not have the desired results. Over 68% of those who have subscribed to that debt relief program, in fact, are in default. So that instrument again is planned. But we think we have found a way of how best to address this. So I want to give not just the country but ESCOM the assurance that we'll work together. I mean, the recent intervention we have had, we have seen that the point I made earlier on, 2.1 million people just on ESCOM account were not paying for their services. That amounts to about 2.5 billion rands per month. That goes to about 30 billion rands per month. You will see that the amount of losses, non-technical losses, what you and I in township parlance we refer to is in Yoka, amounts to about 23 billion rands. So that's a huge dent on the ESCOM revenue. And you couple that with the municipal debt, you can see that the ESCOM as a going concern is going to be threatened. So it's something that requires our collective responsibility, and on this one, we will take leadership as government, because like I said, it's a sovereign problem, it ceases to be an ESCOM problem. In advance, just to congratulate the team for the kind of efforts that we've made. I want to reiterate, 2024 financial year, it's a point of inflection. There's no turning back. We will only improve from here, and that's the assurance we are giving to the country. And well done in advance going into the future, but we are taking responsibility of what happened. And you see the numbers don't look good. So we carry that responsibility. We take the good with the bad, the projection outlook going forward very positive, but we are responsible for that record. So we will not blame anyone. We are responsible for that record. We take full responsibility, and we are able to illustrate to the country that we are moving in the right direction. We can simply improve from here. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Let me start off by extending again once more warm welcome to the Minister. Chair, thank you very much for joining us and making an effort. We are aware of the different time zones that we are on. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of our two board members here. Ms. Ganish, she chairs the audit committee, so she's here to see to it that this is really done. She has to go on holiday hereafter. And Dr. Dilegazi, who also sits on the NTCSA board. Our board has been very supportive throughout this process. The issues that the chairman alluded to as being the causal effects of the delays really needed guidance and a lot of close proximity and collaboration between management and the board. So we want to thank you. I also want to acknowledge the presence of the EXCO team here. This is a team that's really delivered these results, the good and the bad of these results. We own them. They are our results. They are part of our story. They are part of our journey. And we hope that in due course, as we add more points to them, we'll begin to see the recovery path unfolding. I'd like to acknowledge our employees, all 42,000 of them, who are toiling every day, every night to ensure that we drive towards the aspirations of our business and fulfillment of our mandate. So just to start off the presentation, I would like to give you, and I've got 4 slides before Caleb comes and deals with the numbers in detail, really the nuts and bolts of the results coming from the FY 2024. Again, this is a year that ended March 2024. It's a year that is 9 months behind us. Nothing that is happening today in terms of our operational performance is reflected in here. What's important, and you will recall this, is that that's a year that was characterized by intense and frequent load shedding. As the Minister said, again, plant availability at its lowest, hovering around 55%. 330 days of load shedding. We were not anywhere close to our aspirations in terms of emissions performance. Our safety performance not anywhere close to what we desire to do as a business. And again, you can see the increase in energy losses that translates to losses associated with illegal connections and electricity theft through tokens. The net result of that, despite the 18.5% increase in tariffs for that year, the net result is that we suffered a net loss before tax of 25.5 billion rands. Caleb will explain later on how we move from there to the overall loss at the level of 55 billion. That is also reflective of some accounting changes that needed to be put into place to enable the following the setting up of the NTCSA. This year was a painful year, but it was also a building year in terms of our path towards recovery. This is a year when the Generation Recovery Plan was instituted. A lot of effort went into investing both in maintenance expenditure, in human resources. That was critically required to enable execution. It's also a year where we started seeing the government debt relief program kicking into action. The certainty that arises from that gave us the ability to plan better and to do the deep maintenance that was required in that financial year. Later on, we'll then show you how moving from that year, this year's performance starts showing the benefits of that movement. I would like to address myself to some of the key themes coming out of the audit. It's important that we do this. This is a qualified audit opinion that we've received. What's more worrying, as the chair indicated earlier on, is that a number of matters that have been highlighted by the auditors essentially stems from the last 2 to 3 audits. And this is where we have said this to ourselves. We've had a pep talk this morning in this place as management. It is unacceptable. It cannot be that year on year we continue to have a repeat of this, and the board has asked us as management to turn the corner in as far as this aspect is concerned. So you will see that much as we have now stemmed the tide of load shedding, we are going to turn the business upside down in terms of ensuring that we adhere to the controls that we have. We update the policies and procedures that are not working, staying within the governance space, but that we create a spirit of comfort in terms of our ability to have improved governance within the business itself. There's a reference there in terms of where The details are covered, and I would like to encourage you that you get to look at that. Of importance, and as we have said before, the long investigation and audit work into the online vending system has shown gaps in areas that deals with cyber security, has shown gaps in terms of the use of legacy systems, and our inability to pivot and keep up with the times and the discipline required in that area. That section represents significant losses, which we need to stem to ensure that overall our consumers are not burdened with costs that they cannot afford. We've come up with an intervention plan. We'll be visiting the board with this in the year to detail exactly what we're going to be doing in responding to a number of reportable irregularities, but also deepening the culture of control and adherence to our control systems. As you can see, a number of these RIs are really about the lack of doing what needs to be done as a routine on a regular basis. So doing the basics right, issues of compliance with PFMA, reporting in line with PRECA, following up on investigations and ensuring that there's appropriate actions taken where required, and us as a leadership taking very seriously the aspects of our duties in the execution of our day-to-day activities. What have we done? I've introduced the new executive team in the last few months. We'll show you a slide later on that depicts this. We've brought in strengths to supplement areas that we are not so strong in, especially around internal controls, risk management, both from systems processes, but also from an IT/OT perspective. We have also consolidated the forensics and investigations capabilities within the business. They're now housed within the office of the chief executive. We've capacitated them and we allowed the PMO to be established that drives the implementation of findings from investigation that supports the business in ensuring that the supplier reviews in areas where we've had non-compliant suppliers are executed in an expedited manner. We'll be soon embarking on a program to beef up our finance fraternity across the business, both at the corporate and also in the different components, just to ensure that the routines are done and the right level of visibility is in place as a first line of defense and not leave this to be something that is picked up by auditors whenever they come through. So that's the efforts that we're going to drive very hard and drive them in a programmized manner in the same way as we have done with dealing with the issues of load shedding. From an environmental compliance perspective, we have to continue the execution of the generation recovery plan. In the execution of the plan, we also take the opportunities to ensure that we deal with issues of emissions compliance. So we do a lot of work in project scope that addresses the emissions levels of various stations. And that's why in some instances, some of these outages will be lower than ordinarily would have been the case. That's to make sure that as we continue to run our coal stations, we do so in a manner that is also sensitive to our responsibilities with regards to environmental performance. I've spoken about the efforts that we have placed in as far as internal investigation and security is concerned. We also collaborating with external authorities in as far as the state capture task team is concerned. We are doing everything that we need to do on our side to ensure that those cases are taken to the appropriate conclusion, so we collaborate there. Internally, we continue to have work with the security bodies of the state in terms of threats and infrastructure protection, and we have benefited quite substantially from the input that they've given, the guidance in helping us review procedures and policies in as far as security matters are concerned. And I also want to, at this point in time, acknowledge their contribution in the recovery of this business and making sure that we are all able to do what we need to do in our various roles. Our program for security vetting is ongoing. This runs all the way from the top in terms of the non-executive directors down to the EXO members and to the employees in critical areas. We continue to drive this. We have found ways of actually expediting this and making it less painful so we can focus on the job. As we do all of these things, we need to catch up with technology and the use thereof in giving us the first line of defense, making our processes easier so that people are not tempted to derail, and also ensuring that we can optimize both from a turnaround time but also from the cost of doing business as well. I've spoken about the supplier consequence management. This is an important part that stayed dormant for the last 2 years. We have now reactivated it to ensure that suppliers who interact with us and do not do so in manners that are consistent with ethical standards are also brought to book. So you'll see on the right some of the outcomes. This is a running scoreboard. We have a number of cases that are progressing at the moment, and in the new year we'll make it a routine that we report on this to create transparency in terms of what we are doing as part of our efforts to eradicate crime, fraud and corruption. I'd like to invite Caleb at this point, our CFO, who will take us through the nitty-gritties of the 2024 financial year, and I'll revert to take you on the remainder of the presentation.
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. All protocols observed. If we move on to the next slide, the Minister and the Chairman and Dan have taken all the difficult components already, making my life easy. But I think, at the end of the day, you look at, like the Minister said, the correlation between operational performance and financial performance. For me, my analogy is there's a coin, on the one side is operational, on the other side is financial. And you clearly see it in what the Chairman has demonstrated between FY24, the performance improvements in the outlook of FY25. So I think a lot of this has been covered. I'm not going to reiterate. The only point I'm going to discuss on this slide is this deferred tax derecognition. So effectively, once we've unbundled and to account for it at the end of the financial year, what happens, we have this deferred tax asset on our balance sheet. We need to assess whether that asset is still valid going forward. And in taking NTCSA out and it's as a separate subsidiary, you look at where the profitable entities and businesses are. And we know that NTCSA, and you'll see it in the segment reports in the detailed financials, they are the profitable entity. So the test was effectively in the corporate plan horizon of the next 5 years, will the remaining business within the group generate enough taxable income to absorb the assessed loss in our financials, which currently sits at about 305 billion. And the simple answer was no. So effectively, from an accounting treatment perspective, we had to de-recognize the 36.6 billion rand relating to NTCSA when it moves out and where's your taxable streams coming from. Now don't get the message wrong. In the outlook, we do see Eskom being profitable going forward. And the second message is, as and when we generate profits, per the tax legislation, 80% of the assessed loss will be used to set off against the taxable income, and the other 20% we will then be subjected to tax. So I think we also see coming through when we get into FY25 that NTCSA will, because it's profitable, will be contributing to tax, and I'm sure the Commissioner at SARS is going to be very happy with Eskom now paying some tax. But I think that is the key question, and our understanding, the fact that we've taken it out of the balance sheet, the likelihood of us making any adjustments while we do NTCSA or generation is much more limited. We've taken the knock now, and then we move forward going forward. If we then look at the income statement and the key items to highlight here, touched on the revenue, the price and the volume changes. Maybe just quickly on net employee benefits, the 9% year-on-year increases on the back of remuneration adjustments of 7% for the staff, as well as growth coming through in terms of some of the headcount. Other operating expenses, you look at it, a 14% increase, but when you unpack that, the biggest driver to that growth from 36 billion to the 41 has been the repairs and maintenance, specifically in the generation environment to deal with the recovery plan, and you'll see more detail unpacked later. So once you strip out repairs and maintenance, then the other operating expenditure decreases year on year by some 11%. That then filters through to the income statement, to, as we've indicated, the loss before tax, and then the bottom line, 55 billion loss after tax compared to FY23. In FY23, in the financials, there is a restatement that related to the provisioning around environmental restoration costs, etc. Effectively, what had happened previously when we did FY23 financials, we've recorded a credit in the income statement. In assessing it with the auditors, was incorrectly credited to the income statement. It needed to be again credited against the assets and the future fuel. The net impact of all of that was a 2 billion adjustment to the income statement flowing through in terms of equity. The other two key points, and the first one the Minister alluded to. So when I sit back and I look at the performance of Eskom, the improvement in terms of EBITDA, all the cost items are negative. The positive is linked to revenue, which is on the back of the 18.65% drop by volumes. Can't only be relying on tariff increases, standing and presenting the MYPD6 across the country and hearing what people can afford, especially residential consumers and pensioners, etc. I think, as the Minister said, we need to take that on board. We need to deal with our own efficiencies to drop the costs that are required to be passed on to the consumers. But the other part that Eskom needs to deal with is number three. Number three, around the non-technical losses, and as indicated through the OVS, meter tampering, etc. 23 billion rand that is effectively missing from the top line, because we need to address it. Obviously, working with law enforcement agencies, we can couple that with technological rollout of the smart meters. But again, if we don't address that, we are losing out on 23 billion worth of revenue that will go to your bottom line at that average price of 165 cents. And then the Minister mentioned the second point, the ability of not collecting from what we produce and sell to the consumers. In terms of the accounting standards, in terms of those doubtful customers, we then recognize their revenue once we collect it, and you can see that is continuously growing. So there's another 8.9 billion that should have been in that top line and filtering through to the bottom line that is missing. Now those two components added together is over 30 billion rand. Now if we want to bring down the price of electricity, we need to address that, because the difference going forward with the good performance in 2024, well, from 2024 laying the foundation into 2025, the OCGTs have come down. We're dealing with the volumes in terms of not load shedding. So you see the benefit come through in terms of higher volumes by not load shedding. So as we go beyond FY25, what is going to be the changes from an Eskom perspective that is going to sustain the bottom line and to move forward? And we need to address item number 3 and number 4. And the Minister said, with government, we need to deal with the municipal debt. From a regulatory perspective, as the Chairman said, and we've said in the MYPD process, that at the end of the day, there's two elements to the tariff. Eskom, you produce electricity in the most efficient way, and that's what NASA must allow. But the second component is that we need to earn our cost of capital that we are incurring. We are earning a 1.7% return on assets, whereas that cost of capital is 11%. No business is sustainable on that. We phase in the return in the application, obviously trying to balance the impact on the consumer as well. IPPs can never survive with a 1.7% return in terms of their asset base. If we look at the sales, the point here is all categories in terms of our sales portfolio decreased year on year. But yes, you can see there is about some 6.1 gigawatts of solar in terms of our rooftop and embedded generation, that is impacting and reducing the amount of sales that Eskom generates. But it is also positive from our side. We needed to give us space in terms of the system, and as Eskom we do support renewables. But then going forward, I think you can see when Dan does the outlook how that in terms of FY25 is improving. And similarly in our NYPD 6, we do show a trajectory of a downward reduction in terms of volumes over the period. If I go on to primary energy, the key factor here is if you look at the rand per megawatt costs across our production portfolio, you can see coal costs increased by 8% year on year to 541 rand per megawatt hour. OCGTs at a rate perspective due to market conditions improved, both from an Eskom-owned OCGTs as well as the IPPs. But importantly, the other point to highlight is when IPPs don't come online according to plan from a timing perspective, you can see in FY24 there's close to 9 terawatt hours that were not supplied by the IPPs, which means to meet the demand for the country, the Eskom generation fleet needs to step in and meet that supply. Yes, we had challenges, as alluded to, some 13 terawatts we could not meet in FY24, but it does come at a cost. And again, even through the hearings, you need to plan for supply that doesn't come from other sources, not only having the capacity available and maintaining those stations, but also having the necessary contracts in place in terms of coal contracts, maintenance contracts, etc., which does contribute to continued operations that comes through in the forward-looking costs, but also through our application to the regulator. If I then move on to the next slide, what does it mean in terms of our financial position? I think first item I want to start with is if you look at the debt on the balance sheet. Now, importantly, it was the first year where we received the debt relief. Year one, we received 76 billion rand. Simple terms, what someone would expect the 424 billion to drop by about a 76 billion number, and it doesn't. And the reason for that is twofold. Firstly, you'll see, yes, the debt relief period says Eskom is not allowed to borrow. But two things happened in the financial. There was a transaction that was concluded at the end of March 22 that rolled forward into April 2023 into the terms of this financial year. That private placement was 16 billion rand, which means your balance sheet went up with debt of 16 billion. But existing facilities that were already contracted and were being drawn down over the remaining period of those facilities is allowed by the debt relief, and that development finance institution drawdowns in FY24 was 7.5 billion. The second component of this 76 billion debt relief that we drew down on, we then applied to National Treasury, once meeting the conditions to convert it into equity. 44 billion of that was converted by the end of March 2024, and then if you look on the financial position, there's a loan from shareholder of 32 billion. That's the remaining part that is still reflected as debt, which does attract interest. You will also see that year on year our financial position and our cash position did improve. We ended the year with 40 billion worth of cash and cash equivalents, including investments, up 73%. But the other important line, and you'll see this item being more transparent as we go forward into FY25 and beyond, is that line relating to non-current decommissioning liabilities. And in simple terms, firstly relating to Kuba, we need to provide reserves and cash for the decommissioning of Kuba as and when that station is decommissioned. The provision currently is 25 billion around there in our balance sheet, but the amount of cash that's put away at the end of March 24 was in the region of about 1.5 billion rand. Yes, with the better performance in FY25 in the cash position, we're looking to then increase that in FY25, but more importantly, we need to start putting money away in terms of reserves for the coal as well as the mine decommissioning, which then makes up the remainder of that 52 billion. Because at the end of the day, although we're continuing to operate the coal plants, you will get to a point where you have to decommission them and the mines, and you'll have to have funds to deal with that to rehabilitate them. So that is a key point that we should keep our eye on going forward. In terms of the financial ratios, on the back of the performance, gross debt to EBITDA of 11.6, interest cover of 1.1. Ideally, where we want to be is cover your interest and cover your capital repayments from cash from operations. And you'll see in a later slide, when we look going forward for a 10-year horizon, you want a portion, well, actually your sustainable capex to be covered by cash from operations. You only want to be funding for expansionary projects to be sustainable. When Dan looks at the outlook for FY25, you will see that the gross debt to EBITDA ratio does improve significantly on the back of the EBITDA improving in terms of the better performance in FY25, but also the fact that we start seeing the benefits come through from the debt relief situation. I spoke about this, 76 billion in the first year. Where we are in the current year, FY25, 64 billion of debt relief. We've only drawn down 8 billion thus far. That means the remainder of the 64 billion is going to be drawn down in the last quarter of this financial year. And the reason for that is no one wants to borrow money and incur finance costs that you can defer for as long as possible. And the same applies to Eskom. That is why we will draw down the remaining 56 billion in the last quarter. Because where we are financially, we are in a much better positive position. We even went to the board this week to get approval to accelerate some capital projects that are needed because of the better cash flow position we have. And we are not borrowing for it. Through our financial position, we basically will fund that from cash. If you look at the third year, there's a 40 billion worth of debt relief, and then at the end of that cycle, a 70 billion takeover. Discussions are ongoing with National Treasury. What does it all mean in terms of our balance sheet and where we want that debt to end at the end of the horizon? And I'll touch on that in a later slide. I'm not going to talk about municipal debt. Minister has highlighted this clearly, but I think we talk municipalities, let's not also forget the signals we're seeing from some key metros like Swana. We entered into that payment arrangement. So 95 billion at the end of November, and then Dan will touch on, if we continue on this trajectory at the end of March 25, this number could be as high as 110 billion rand. More concerning from our perspective as Eskom, the positive benefit we're getting from the debt relief of 250 billion rand. If nothing is done to arrest the situation, that benefit from the debt relief will be nullified by Eskom continuing to carry and effectively being a bank to the municipalities, and then we don't see the benefit of the debt relief. So that is a key component, as the Minister has highlighted, that needs to be addressed. If I move to the next slide, cash flow statement. I think at the end of the day, difficult here, we generated enough cash from operations per the debt relief to pay for your capex from cash. We can see what we paid in terms of our capital commitments. And the point here is, if you look at it, there's about close to 90 billion rand in debt service commitments of debt repayments of the capital and the interest. And we've only generated an EBITDA of around 43 billion rand. So two things have to happen. One, we need that EBITDA to grow for Eskom to be sustainable. And number two, we need the debt service commitments to drop from around 90 billion to 50 billion rand, so we have become sustainable and move away from being a burden on the fiscus and the taxpayer going forward. I spoke about the cash where we landed at the end of the year, 23 billion rand. In terms of where we invested in terms of our property, plant and equipment and our infrastructure, repairs and maintenance on the back of the generation recovery, a growth of 38%, spending 22.8 billion, but also money being spent on the network businesses, including your capital expenditure growing from 34 billion to 37 billion. These numbers of capital expenditure have to increase quite significantly going forward to cater for the needs of maintaining generation, but also for growing generation in terms of our journey to also decarbonize, but also to bring in a mix of technologies that caters for the system in terms of South Africa that we require. We can't only rely on coal. As we transition to renewables, we need other technologies in terms of transitioning technologies. And you also need battery storage, not only battery storage as we have it, but also, in our view, we need another pump storage from a South African system perspective. I think this is the outlook. GDP talks about year 10-year horizon. I think it's important to give color to the public. Where do we see generation and what they need to do going forward in line with the strategy? For generation, in the next 10 years, we see investments required of 835 billion, of which just to sustain the current infrastructure requires in the region of about 31 billion per annum. But for expansionary capex, that grows to about 45 billion per annum. Other key message here, as we add 17 gigawatts of capacity on the generation side, you can see the portfolio mix from Eskom generation changing with much more renewables coming in as coal goes out, and then also looking at gas increasing going forward. We haven't got any new build nuclear in this outlook. Similarly, on the distribution side, they need just under 14,000 kilometers of line and required to invest 162 billion rand over the next 10 years. And we're well aware of what is required in terms of the TDP for NTCSA going forward. So again, significant investment required from an Eskom perspective over the next 10 years. So the debt on the balance sheet, and here we've got to be very careful we don't get ourselves back to a level of close to 500 billion and having debt service commitments of 90 to 100 billion per annum, which is not sustainable. So our outlook in terms of post-debt relief and the trajectory we're on, we want the debt on the balance sheet to get to around 250 billion and to stay at that level. We want to be borrowing around 15 billion per annum on our balance sheet. And then we need to work in terms of the triple P mechanism of how do you fund the other expansionary capital requirements in conjunction with the framework that National Treasury is also setting up. This goes across the three businesses of the transmission generation as well as distribution going forward. And then that allows us to be in a position where the debt service cost total is about 50 billion. You need to get that EBITDA number literally double to be more sustainable. Service debt service commitments of 50 billion, pay for about 40 billion for sustaining capex, and then you borrow for expansionary capex going forward. So ultimately, Eskom's financial sustainability requires four elements to work interchangeably and at the same time. If you fix the tariff and you don't fix municipal debt, you're going to have a gap in the system and you'll go back to National Treasury. National Treasury, together with and government, with the 250 billion debt relief, plus historical support cumulatively at the end of March 26, plus the 70 billion takeout, would have contributed just under 500 billion worth of support. Government has many other programs that they need to deal with in terms of the country's requirements. They can't keep on investing over 50 billion per annum into Eskom. So they have done their part. We, as Dan has indicated, we need to deal with our own cost efficiencies to drop that. Municipal debt has to be resolved, like the Minister. And as I mentioned, in terms of the revenue, yes, we must get the efficient operating costs, but we also got to get that cost of capital to be recovered. It's a true cost, it's a real cost, and for us to be sustainable, those four elements need to work, and they need to work at a similar time. Otherwise, you're always going to have a gap in terms of that equation. Dan, over to you.
We started off by taking you back to the diagnostics that was done back in 2022 as far as what pays the business. And Teto really spent time in terms of the operational, financial, and the sustainability components thereof. Caleb has just, I also shared with you the key themes coming out of the audit for that financial year of 2024. Caleb has just given you the rundown in terms of the details that underpins the observations that we stashed. Next, what we want to do is to really give you the benefit of understanding how the current observed operational performance improvements translates to the financial position. And here we share with you the outlook. These are audited numbers, the outlook from where we sit. This outlook covers the first 6 months of the current financial year. As you may not be too surprised, the plant availability in comparison to the previous financial year has improved quite substantially, just under 63% on average of EAF, and as a result of that, we have not experienced load shedding now to more than 250 days. At the point in time when we looked at this, on the snapshot is really around 183 days. We're also seeing some improvements in terms of our emissions performance. We still have some way to go towards our desired target levels on an annual basis. Our safety is not at the point where we still want to be. Again, I emphasize this area requires a lot of focus from management with our staff, and we've spoken to organized labor this morning around it. The distribution energy losses, I've explained what has caused the delay. That is part of the contributor to this energy losses, and we'll tackle this in a very focused manner as well. The bottom line is that on the back of just under 13% tariff increase and also year-on-year sales increase of 4%, we see a big improvement in terms of the profitability of the business going forward. And this is where we said to you that at 6 months into the financial year, we could foresee a net profit after tax of over 10 billion rands. We are 9 months now into the operations. We do have some numbers and sense. There's nothing that suggests to us that this result cannot be delivered. What we need to do is to stay the course in terms of the generation operations. We are doing as much maintenance as we were doing before, and we are really benefiting from the investments done in the previous year in terms of the reliability of our plant. Of course, the government debt relief continues. We need to meet all the conditions so that we can do the conversion. The pain point is around the increasing municipality debt. And for this, we need to think differently, creatively, and in a very radical way, look at ensuring and bringing all our stakeholders on board to find a way that can give us comfort. And the Minister has spoken about it. So if you look at the results that we shared earlier on, from the FY24 year, the year that we said was the most painful, but also a year of building, in which the generation recovery plan started picking up momentum, the investments in the maintenance, the right skills of people on board, processes, improvements in as far as our operational sites are concerned. You now can see from this set of results, this forecast in numbers, that the benefits are beginning to come in. And sustained, this will essentially be an indication of that inflection point in as far as the business performance is concerned. You would have expected this, because the high levels of availability, the availability of electricity, where we're collecting revenue from our sales, translates to a better financial picture than we have experienced before. It's not only us who are experiencing this boom on the back of generation performance. Many of our customers themselves in their own reporting of their financial positions have acknowledged the impact that no load shedding has done to their bottom line. It is this picture that we want to maintain for South Africa so that we can actually stimulate the economic growth, grow the confidence from an investment destination perspective, improve our own investment rating, because when we go back to the market in the next 2 years, we really want to go there and have the best cost of capital that we'll be exposed to. I don't want to belabor the slide. It shows the trends in terms of the improved performance from a generation recovery perspective, the reduction in unplanned losses. We have said that this become one of the important KPIs to watch. When we are below particular given levels, and for the summer we have said we stay below 13,000, we should be able to have a comfortable summer. Our performance to date suggests we're hovering between 11.5 to 12. At some points we've hit well below 10. It is when we stay below this level of unplanned losses that we are comfortable in supplying the demand as we progress and being able to do maintenance that we so require in the summer in preparation for the next winter. For us, the availability of our base load capacity is important in ensuring that we can put load shedding risk behind us. And yes, when our fleet doesn't work, the risk increases, and so biggest focus with the team is to ensure that we really continue to improve from one month to another as we implement and deepen the generation recovery plan. I've also spoken about our strategy and various platforms. I think I just want to re-emphasize that this strategy is connected to the diagnostics that the chairman shared before. It is something that we have to stay the course on in as far as execution is concerned. We remain focused on delivering financial and operational sustainability. I cannot belabor that. The facilitation of a competitive future energy industry. We have now operationalized NTCSA, and our focus attention is on bearing down the ways of working, making sure that NTCSA succeeds, and also preparing for the unbundling of the distribution business. The municipality debt issue is central in terms of creating that comfort for us. As we do so, we'll accelerate our own portfolio of clean technologies to position ourselves to play and continue to play a meaningful role in as far as the electricity supply sector is concerned. The modernization of our power grid is going to be spearled by NTCSA as far as transmission is concerned. There's a lot of investments that we also need to do in our distribution space. We spoke about the adoption and rollout at the large scale of smart meters. We also talk about the rollout of microgrids to ensure we can bring about universal access to communities that are peripheral from the infrastructure of distribution and also transmission. As we do this, we'll also take opportunities to improve in terms of revenue security. We've discussed those issues around the illegal connections and other stuff that robs us of the value we deserve. And lastly, the pillar around our contribution towards net zero emissions. We have decoupled our just strategy, has decoupled the closure of stations and what the alternative technologies should look like for us. We are now progressing in developing these projects to an investment point. So our strategy is clear. We have capacitated ourselves from an EXCO perspective to bring in skills and talent in areas that require focus. This is very important because we have a very short window of being able to, on the back of the recovery of generation business performance, that we also ready ourselves for the next phase to ensure that we capacitate these business units as they get unbundled, but that we also take an opportunity to ensure that we are ready for the competition that is coming our way. I know one of our biggest issues here is around the makeup of our teams, the issue around the reflections in terms of gender. We have opportunities to still get this right, and we are busy with that aspect. The legal separation process is ongoing. As I said, I cannot belabor this. When all is said and done, and there's a lot of steps to still take into consideration as we navigate our pathway towards this, Eskom, under a new holdings structure, will become an entity that has got subsidiaries that are focused on delivering their own business plans, subsidiaries with their own governance structures, very focused in terms of delivering in terms of their own value chain. The next NTCSA entity, as you may be aware, will now have to take the role of the TSO following the promulgation of coming into effect of the ERA. And when that happens, NTCSA needs and will be supported to have the operational independence for them to play this crucial role for the market as we implement the reforms. Of course, the end state in terms of the TSO will be determined in the coming years as we get through the details, and that will also to a great extent determine the end state of the form and shape of NTCSA going forth. But we continue with the unbundling of the business as per the strategic role that we have. For the remainder of this financial year, we are very clearly focused on the delivery of additional megawatts, the 2.5 gigawatts, the meeting of the obligations and all conditions for the debt relief program. We have to find a step change in terms of addressing municipal debt, and we had some very interesting and fruitful conversations with our colleagues from organized labor this morning, and at the same time also focus on our people. This business survives simply because of the people it has. As we go down this journey, it's important that we drive the culture of high performance, ethical culture, and empower the skill set, and through the skill set updating that's required for the space that we're going forward. We have to also dial up on our engagement with the local communities. We exist in neighborhoods that are dependent on us, that are interlinked with us, and as we go through all these transition processes, it's important that they are equally part of us and are part of our plans in totality. The one program and the one leg of our financial sustainability, other than tariff, debt relief, and unit debt, is the whole aspect of driving cost efficiencies within the business. We have revamped our program. It's led internally with a core team of young, talented individuals that we have taken across the business, and will augment their capacity to drive for revenue growth, cost efficiencies, continued work in the primary energy space, and more so the inclusion and drive of digital transformation in our business processes and the efficiencies around capital productivity. We need to do this so that we can reduce our cost to serve, so we can be ready for competition, and that we can hand on heart indicate to South Africans that we are their most prudent operator when it comes to this space. This slide indicates the progress with regards to the return to service or the addition of new megawatts to the grid. As we said, by March 2025, there's some 2.5 gigawatts we need to return. Both Quebec Unit 2 and Kgosientsho are going through the commissioning phases. It's a very delicate process that requires attention to detail, that needs us to follow every step and protect the gains that we've done in terms of project execution through to this point. And David's leadership is really full hands-on here, and you may be aware that in some of the previous commissionings we've had some mishaps. We have integrated all of those lessons, and we are being very pedantic in ensuring that our teams under no pressure to cut corners in this regard. There's some work that we need to do around Medupi, the engagements there with our suppliers in terms of optimizing our processes, and those are going to be taking place in the coming week as well. And once we have arrived at these additions of megawatts, and we have sustained the operations in terms of the current EAF trajectory as it is, we'll be able to begin to then start answering the question as to where are we in relation to long-term removal of or defeat of load shedding. Last week there was an incident at the Matla Power Station. I think I should talk about it. The one unit 6 in particular, suffered a rupture of a high-pressure steam pipe that led to quite an extensive damage of that unit. It also led to some damage on the adjacent unit 5. But of more concern was the injuries suffered by 9 of our colleagues. I'm very happy that of the 3 that were admitted in the ICU here in Alberton. 2 of them are now in the general ward, and 1 is still recovering in the ICU. He's moved from a state of being critical to being stable, and you can see from the local hospitals, 3 have been discharged and 2 remain in the general ward. We've had a visitation with them. They're in good spirits. They are well supported. They are supported with their families and also supported with the employees and fellow colleagues who were also at work at the time and those who came back on shift in that space. We are very comfortable with regards to how our systems responded in terms of our emergency procedures. Very strong leadership team on the ground of young, capable individuals who took charge of the situation, and we are very happy that we have not lost a life in this process. Of course, work that is underway is about establishing the extent of the damage, scoping the work for repair, doing the investigation in terms of understanding the root cause so we can take these lessons on for the rest of our fleet. And for that, we are very thankful that the Minister could take time out of his busy schedule and also be with us at this instance. So this is my last slide that essentially emphasizes the point that we are now positioned to really be on an upward trajectory as far as the business performance is concerned. Sustained generation performance at the level that we see translates to financial improvements, and our aspirations towards the path of the EAF target of March 2025 remains on track. We have to, of course, double up when it comes to internal controls, that we shift this kind of mindset within the business, and the leadership this morning recommitted to being present and leading the charge in this aspect. We will drive this in a very focused and programmatized way. Ours is to seek improvements on a year basis, and this audit that you've just had here does not make us proud. So we're really setting ourselves up to get through to that point. We are, of course, in the middle of the decision process of NERSA when it comes to tariff applications. We've made a case. We've also heard what South Africans have to say. We believe and still maintains that the cost-reflective tariff is necessary for this business not to go back into the back and forth with regards to its financial certainty. We also understand in this process that it's important that we protect the poorest of society, the vulnerable, and hence our proposals with regards to some revamping that needs to be done in the free basic electricity component. And lastly, leadership stability is important. We are settling our leadership vacancies across all levels, and we're filtering this down in the business so that accountability can really be held appropriately, and the cultural change that we need to see is given a chance to surface. From our financial outlook, the sales, we see some growth there, 2 to 3% higher. That augurs well in terms of the translation to our financial numbers at the end. Significant reduction in terms of OCGT. We explain this every week. We've moved from 1 paragraph of giving you a system update to 2 pages because we bear it all, in detail, so that we can remove the level of suspicion that goes up into that area. When we go down this path, we'll improve on our matrices. Our aim, as on the back of a review by S&P, our aim is to really get ourselves to a point where we can have a substantially improved investment rating from the agencies before we get into the markets in the year of 2027 for our normal business requirements. So I'd like to pause here and again thank our staff, thank our board, thank you, Minister, for your support. Thanks to South Africans who've been patient with us. This business, sustain this path, will actually make South Africa proud again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the panel. So today we had committed that we were going to finish at 2 o'clock. However, it was very important that we go deeper into the aspects of our annual report and also what is Eskom doing in terms of improving what we have seen in the previous year. So we're a bit less stingy with time, so I hope my leadership won't be angry with me as I extend the session to another 30 minutes so that we can be able to take questions and answers, and then we can close off. That's just our generosity from SABC side. All right, so can I then allow all the members that are in the house or in this auditorium and those that have connected virtually can ask their questions. For those that are virtually connected, please post your questions on the chat. We'll be able to read them so that everybody can be able to know what your question is before we can ask the panel to respond. I'll start in the room. I'll take about 5 questions and then move over to the virtual platform. We'll start with you, Antoinette. Okay.
Thank you, Antoinette Slabbert. I'm a freelance journalist. Mr. Marangoni, I just want to understand this thing about the theft on the online or via the online voucher generation platform. Is it a new mechanism that you have just discovered? How did that come about? And the 23 billion that is quantified for electricity theft, how much of that relates to this mechanism? And then, Mr. Kassim, could you please explain to us this tax issue with NTCSA? What is the impact beyond just a statement or a number in the income statement or on the balance sheet? What influence does that have? Does it impact your ratings or anything of that kind? And then I would like to ask the Minister, you said earlier that there are some issues that you would like to discuss with National Treasury in relation to the tariff increase, and that the government might come to the aid of the consumer in terms of limiting that increase. Were you able to do that? I believe the tariff decision is tomorrow. We're scheduled for tomorrow. And then lastly, I would just like to understand this issue about PFMA documents not being available. How is that possible that after all these years of discovering fraud and corruption and shenanigans that ESCOM still has an issue with documents not being available for the auditors, PFMA documents? Thank you.
I think I forgot to say that at least 2 questions at a time. Okay, all right. Yes, you may proceed.
Hi, this is Mobile from Reuters. Perhaps maybe for Kgosientsho, are you able to give us an indication of when was the last time ESCOM reported a profit after tax? And then also, so how much of your forecast sales and profit is dependent on this cost-reflective tariff increase that you're asking NERSA? Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Kgosientsho from the SABC. Mine was also linked to what my colleague has asked there, just around the issue of the NTCSA and how you going to work around issues of taxation. Where are we right now, where that process is concerned? Another one, just out of where we find ourselves now, the tensions escalating or playing out in Mozambique. Have those more or less, threatened security of supply in terms of your relationship or the work that you're doing with Mozambique? What is your thinking, or what are the efforts around that particular issue? I'm sorry, just one last one. Around the issue of the weak controls within ESCOM, has there been a consequence management? That people held accountable in terms of where ESCOM finds itself now? How do you actually ensure that this does not repeat itself. Thank you.
There's two more for that.
Good afternoon, I'm Tumba Kakaba from the French Development Agency. In terms of the sales forecasts for the last decade or so, they've been on the decline, whereas for FY25 there's a forecast of 2 or 3% increase. What would drive that increase? The second question relates to the slide where it was mentioned that there will be supply disciplinary processes put in place as one of the measures to improve governance. Could you add some color to that, to what that actually looks like for entities, for example, like the McKenzies and the ABBs of this world, who are very much in the public domain? And then the third and last question relates to the slide 12 mentioned by the GCE, where it was mentioned that prescribed officers were found to have breached fiduciary duties related to short-term IPP program. What did that relate to? Thank you.
In relation to revenues
sorry, can you please exchange that mic? You seem not to hear you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fair. Thank you so much. My name is Tulizulu from NetBank. Thank you so much for that comprehensive presentation. I've got two questions in relation to revenue and then the last one in relation to the home loan book. In relation to the revenue, you indicated that from your perspective, the fall in revenue, is the fall in sales in a particular sector across the board? In other words, is it in relation to your big customers or the municipal clients or across the board? And the second question is in relation to, we have heard via media that some of your big customers want to negotiate in terms of the rates that they pay. Is there any color that you can give us in relation to how far those conversations are? And then just the last one in relation to the home loan book. What was that book sold for? We know that it was part of the requirements by the National Treasury for that book to be sold for the equity injection. Thank you.
Did you say you're from NetBank? No book. No book in quiet.
Okay. I'm just going to read the 5 questions that were posted on the virtual platform, and then we can take the responses from the panel. So the first question is from Kgosientsho from EAP Business Intelligence, and he says that NCCSA only became operational and started trading on 1st July 2024, well after financial year 2023-2024 year end. Okay. On 31st March 2024. So how did the NCCSA impact the lateness of the financial year 2023-2024 financials? Please advise the municipal area debt to ESCOM as at 31st March 2024 and at end November 2024. Third question, please advise on the ESCOM's debt to lenders as at 31st March 2024 and at November 2024. Lastly, a net profit of 10 billion rands have been forecast for financial year 2025. On what average ESCOM electricity price percentage increases this based on? And the next question is from Tutuko Kumalo, EMF. I see we will be or we are addressed mainly by men. What is the gender equity ratio of the board, EXCO, MENCO, and in general employees at ESCOM? Where are the women? Mpati Yengwa, Sasfin, clarity around MYPD 6. Will NERSA reintroduce areas into MYPD 6? Thanks. Over to you, panel members. GCE, Minister.
Yeah, I'll deal with, thank you very much. Definitely, I'll deal with the questions from Antoinette. I'll also pick up a question from Katla Hamahodi. My colleagues here Caleb, and I see Jerome, our head of legal, is here as well. He can talk a bit about the supply review process and how we run it. The obvious theft is quite a sophisticated theft that's happening in a space. It required quite extensive forensic efforts in establishing how it happens, and we're still not yet there in totality. As we indicated, the investigation is still going on. What we have reported and can say now is that it can only be possible through collaboration of people internally in the business and those who are outside. The extent of the losses attributable to this activity of illegal tokens, in as far as the 23 billion rands that Caleb referred to, cannot be known with certainty at this point. Suffice to say that that loss is broadly made up of what will be illegal tokens. It will also be made up of the zero buyers who have tempered their meters and bypassed their meters. As you saw the numbers during the KRM2 change out. What we hope to do, of course, is to narrow, zero in terms of how the obvious illegal actions are happening, and as undertaken, we will provide update once we've arrived at that point. What we do as we go along the investigation is to look at areas of vulnerability that we can remedy, and also begin to think about how we will remedy the situation in its totality. It is still a very delicate investigation that's going on. It's not straightforward, and hence the process of getting the auditors to a point of having a view of how to approach it took quite long. So I want to leave it at that point. And the second component or question was asked by Katleho is, and Anton also touched on it, why are there weaknesses in documentation in the business? We cannot provide excuses for this. This lack of documentation, such adherence to controls happen when there's no emphasis in terms of doing the routines daily, weekly, monthly, and strengthening the combined assurance that has to be in place before your internal audit processes kick in. This is the one part that our board has been very strong in urging us as management to really build these layers of defense and build the aspect of taking accountability from a management point of view, and we'll do exactly that. We have an understanding of where some of our challenges lie. We have an understanding that some of our policies are not talking to the organization that we have today, but also where policies are correct, we are just not following them. We will create that focus and visibility in the midst of all these other activities of unbundling and so on. This is an aspect that is painful to actually go through, but we are very determined that we will take it up, and we have given that undertaking to the board and to the minister, and we will be held accountable in that space. You've asked us to what are we doing about these areas. I've indicated to you that we're looking at interventions and supports. We will bring in adequate capacity in areas that have shown gaps. We've said our finance fraternity requires bolstering, both at the corporate level but also at the sites. Our procurement space requires some more vigilance in terms of ensuring that we stick to appropriate documentation in this area, and also clarifying our business processes so that they do not end up confusing what we need to do and how that looks in relation to adherence to the rules of the PFMA. So our capacity that we have on board from additional EXCO members we have is going to assist us greatly in this space. We will take this on in a very programmatic way, and not deal with it as business as usual. It requires attention, and I can also tell you that we spent nine months of the current financial year in an audit mode. In 3 months' time, the year ends, and so the cycle repeats. So there's urgency on our side to really get some of these basics in place, so we can start, having the right results. The right results not for the auditors, the right results for us to have comfort that we are running this business appropriately. So that's what I want to say about those two aspects. I hope it covers Antoinette and Katlaho's questions. And I'll hand over to Kate.
Thanks. If I deal with the question around Antoinette, around the deferred tax, around NTCSA, what does it mean going forward, and how the rating agencies see this? At the end of the day, we've adjusted, we've de-recognized effectively NTCSA, operationalized now on July. They generate profits, they will be paying taxes. We don't see this as any negative impact from a rating agency perspective. They will look at the group overall, what's the performance, what's the outlook, and as indicated in the FY25 outlook, if you look at the performance, the EBITDA margin growing, you also look at what's happening with the debt to EBITDA ratio, that's an improvement. For us, I think this is on the back of, I think it was S&P's rating outlook of really looking at a positive outlook on the back of not only the generation performance, but what we now see in terms of the financial performance. So I don't see any negative. Yes, we've adjusted for it now. It's done, it's in the past. We now move forward. Maybe let me deal with some of the other questions. I think one from Reuters linked to Kgosientsho around the forecast of the profit of 10 billion, and I think Ntumba also touched on that. The question is, what is the assumption of tariff embedded in this forecast? We are in the last year of the current price cycle, which is the 12.74%. So it's the price that is already determined. The new NYPD6 will only kick in from April next year. So that's on the NERSA approved tariff that then contributes as a component to that forecasted profit of 10 billion there. I think while we're on that, there's another key element that also contributes to that. We've been in discussions with SARS in terms of historic rebates around our diesel expenditure. You will see in our subsequent events note, we managed to get to an agreement with SARS to close out the recovery of those diesel rebates. That agreement is 9 billion rand, which is a subsequent event, and then that recovery does flow through in FY25, also contributing to that net profit line. With regard to the question on NPAs, I think Julie asked it. Yes, it's firstly, it comes to Eskom in terms of negotiated pricing agreements, frameworks, be it short-term or long-term, approved by the DMRE, so it's policy. There are specific criteria in which customers then make that submission to NERSA. We, through distribution, would adjudicate each application. If the criteria are met, or even if they're not met, we take it to our governance, our board committees, and we will say it meets the criteria. Yes, we would recommend it as a special pricing agreement, whether it's short-term or long-term. But then it still goes to NERSA as an application, where NERSA then conducts a public participation process. One of the things highlighted in the NYPD6 public hearings was between NYPD5, that 3-year horizon, and NYPD6 that will kick in next year, there have been a number of new pricing agreements that have been agreed and awarded by NERSA following the governance and public participation process, which in simple terms means those customers don't pay the standard price, they pay a discounted price, and in terms of the methodology, the difference is picked up by the rest of the customer base. Now, what impact did it have in our application in the first year? It meant overall there was a 5.7% link to the growth in the NPAs going forward, because Eskom still needs to recover that cost of supply to that customer category. Ntumba, you asked the question around, historically sales have always been decreasing, so why the growth? And I think fundamentally, if you look at FY24, 7% of the reduction, some 13 terawatt hours, has been due to load shedding. We are seeing the benefit of not load shedding. So effectively it will go up by 7%, but as we said, with certain customers also opting for alternatives, etc., and other economic conditions, there is then a reduction. You get back to neutralizing the load shedding, but other factors then takes it down to a 4% growth on year, the fact that we're not load shedding. Let me get back to Kgosient's first question, just around NTCSA, and so why did it take so long when they only operationalized on the 1st of July? I think you must separate the legal basis and the accounting basis. In terms of accounting framework, in terms of the IFRS framework, in terms of substance over form, at the end of March 2024, effectively all the suspensive conditions were met in terms of only administration issues that were remaining. So then we had to account for that transfer of assets from ESCOM to NTCSA, and effectively that is the work that was required from an NTCSA perspective, and as Dan has included, as part of that they had to do a valuation in terms of the upstream guarantee. I didn't touch on Chris's second question. Unit debt March 24 was 75 billion, November 24 is 95 billion. In terms of debt on the balance sheet, we are sitting at the end of this is the number at the end of October at 397 billion compared to the 412 at the end of March. The net profit, I think I've touched on. Lenders, yeah, I've done that. For the last profit, I definitely know that. Being as the CFO for over 7 years, I never declared a profit. So I can definitely say 7 years ago. So 2017, I started acting in August 2017. So yeah, thanks for the smile and on your face for that question. Will NASA introduce, what will they do with the real debts? I think this is a very important question. At the end of the day, again, you've got customers that are challenged financially. They are paying for their electricity. Now we're asking them to pay for people that are not paying. And in terms of the amount we requested 2% of arrear debts, whereas currently it's running between 4 and 5%. Now at the end of the day, again, in any business there are areas which are operational issues, so we put it in from that mechanism. In the past, when NERSA did allow recovery of arrear debts, they allowed a percentage of 0.5%. So it is an issue. Lots of questions were asked by the regulator and other stakeholders around it. But as the Minister said, this needs to be addressed because we've got paying customers that are struggling. Now we're asking them to pay for other customers that are not paying. I think we need a better solution to that. In terms of the home loan, yes, from a board perspective, we've signed an agreement, but we're still following some governance processes in terms of the PFMA approval. We still need some other administration truly to go through. So at this point in time, we can't disclose. We've issued the SENS. I think that number was around 5.7 billion rand in terms of the price of EFC, but we're still following a lot of other processes. I think those are the key questions for me.
Okay, let me deal with the two other questions that I didn't get to. The first one was about the prescribed officer commentary that is sitting in the IR. This pertains to an IPP contract that required to also have a reconciliation account contract that wasn't put in place because the teams internally had a back and forth engagement, and the auditors were the first to pick this up and elevate it to the point of the engagement of the board. The required contract for reconciliation has since been put in place. It is existing between NTCSA and the customer. And what we'll be doing in the next few weeks is regularizing the allocation of and the recovery of that money. And we'll close this reportable irregularity. Of course, internally we have work to do around the issues of the accountabilities and so on. The one question that was asked relates to gender statistics within the business. Across the business, at senior management level, we are at 41-42% female representation. The board is sufficiently gender balanced. And I can tell you that it's robust in the board meetings because of the female colleagues that we have. The pressure is on us at EXCO level to actually also role model that display across the business. And as I said, the snapshot that I showed you of the EXCO makeup and the fact that there are vacancies, we've taken this challenge on board. But we are at 42%. We have a target as a business to get to 2030 at a 50-50 level, and our commitment is to drive towards that aspect as well.
Mrs. Apologies, I just want to answer the question. I think Mtumba was asking which categories of customers were we losing sales. It was across all categories. It's in the slide, and in the other question around Mozambique and is it impacting on the supply we're getting from Kawarabasa? No impact. But Sekomoto can provide detail.
Maybe just on the gender issues, we have said the following to the chair of the board that the demographic complexion, mainly in the dimensions of the racial character and also the gender mainstreaming are non-negotiable across the board. So ESCOM is no exception, and how you measure that, you don't group categories or levels. Each and every level, the expectation is that the same should happen at EXCO. So I know that the four most recent appointments, they've resolved in part the race question and also the gender question. There's opportunities that present themselves in the two EXCO vacant positions. So our expectation is that females should occupy those positions. So like I said, there are things that are non-negotiable. That's our overall orientation. And then on the issues of Mozambique, not necessarily the details, as the broader conversation is the post-election violence does impact our own interests, and the other manifestation is around the possibility of the risk associated with supply from that side, including the issues of gas supply. So what we have resolved at Cabinet is that Minister Lamola, and you've seen yesterday, he was engaging with the Mozambican counterparts first to ensure that we contribute to finding a long-lasting solution, normalizing the situation there, but of course invariably also trying to protect our interests, including but not limited to what we're getting from Kawarabasa. And then on the NT issues, as it relates to our contribution to the conversations around the tariff applications, yes, we are discussing with National Treasury. We're confident we'll get there. I think what is now happening inside NERSA is that the subcommittee on electricity will go to the full board. We'll get the answers next year. But internally in government, we're having those conversations. Like I said, it's not my intention to surface those in the public, but I think there are policy levers that we will exploit ourselves to ensure that we pushing the poor, or everyone first, and the poor in particular, because of the disproportionate impact of the proposed tariff, but also protecting the interest of ESCOM. We think that we can achieve both, and there are policy levers that makes that possible. So yes, I think in the general outcomes and determination of next, I'm sure you will see that coming through. Thanks.
Jerome, would you like to deal with the issue of supply review and how we handle it? No free lunches, Jerome.
Thank you. Insofar as the supplier review is concerned, we've established a governance structure called the supplier review committee. Basically, what the structure looks at, the structure. Thank you, my HR executive, for guidance. So, insofar as the supplier review is concerned, we've established a structure, a governance structure that looks at suppliers that are found to have committed misconduct across the board. Basically, what the structure does is look at the serious nature of the conduct that is committed by the supplier. The maximum penalty that we can impose is 10 years. So the structure is quite robust. We don't just take decisions without inviting the suppliers to make representations, because the process needs to be fair, equitable, and just. So, of course, we've sanctioned quite a number of suppliers through this process. Some do appeal, and we consider the appeal, and depending on the circumstances of each case, we will then either reconsider our sanction or alternatively keep the sanction as it was imposed by the structure. That is how we deal with the suppliers that are found to have committed misconduct so far. Thank you.
Okay. So we will take one last round, but I'm going to limit this to only one question per journalist or those who are really planning to ask that one last question. So I'll take, yes, who says?
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. The question relates really to the municipal debt issue that the minister alluded to earlier on. We focused in 3 to 4% growth in terms of sales. However, does that translate into something, or is that impacted by the municipal debt? So the minister said they're working on something. Can you give us some color with respect to that? Because there's been many initiatives, including SALGA, including National Treasury recently. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon, it's Velohan Dasha from Jacaranda FM. I just wanted to know, how does ESCOM plan to manage its financial obligation in the context of the current economic environment and the ongoing global energy price fluctuations?
So I would like to say congratulations to Minister and ESCOM team. Such a beautiful turnaround during just last half a year. You know, as a foreigner, we have been experiencing load shedding during last 3 or 4 Christmas. Not only load shedding, you know, but also you ran a loss, ESCOM. Because, you know, now then you are billionaire, 10 billionaire, right? So my question is, you know, how did you lead such a good team to achieve such a beautiful turnaround? Thank you. I'm from Secretary, China. Thank you.
One last question in the room, and then we'll jump into the virtual.
Marvin again from Reuters. On non-core asset disposal, are you able to give us color on which ones have been identified for FY25?
Everyone wants color. I think it's consistent with the period of the year. So it's very sad. Everyone is festive here.
Maybe let's take the last. Oh.
This is what we came.
Over to you, panelists, for the last question.
Yeah, I think we will always look at non-core assets that we would look to dispose of. The key focus was the Eskom Finance Company. It's part of the engagements with National Treasury in terms of the debt relief conditions. At this point in time, we haven't got any significant non-core assets to dispose of. In terms of financial obligations, how will Eskom meet it? I think in that outlook that I was demonstrating, that with the debt relief, it made a massive difference when you don't have to stress about meeting your debt service commitments and effectively defaulting in terms of government guarantees requiring National Treasury to step in and to make good some 300 billion rand worth of guarantees. And I think also you could have cross defaults across the state-owned entities. We're comfortable that based on the operational performance of what we've seen, we will meet our operational needs. Yes, the tariff decision is an important decision, but there are other elements that we need to address, including, as the Minister said, the municipal debt. And I think, yeah, those were because Mr. Wang just said, well done to the team, Dan will answer that. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe just to respond to you, Mr. Wang, and thank you very much. State Grid is a long-term partner of Eskom. We have dealt a lot of things together technically, and we continue to collaborate. The team that you see executing the plan that we have at Eskom is really ably led from the board perspective, EXCO, and below us. There's really focused alignment in as far as what we need to do, and the strength really comes from collaborative networking there. We all play various roles, but we are clear in terms of directionally what we want to deliver, and that's really the magic in terms of the recovery that you see. We are well supported, of course, by other stakeholders, no less than a shareholder minister, but we also recognize the contribution of other processes that are championed by government to enable decision making and some insights where we are. We are running this project. It's a country project, and so all of us play various roles in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have come to the end. Oh, this is
the first question. I mean, if you have to do a critique of the interventions that are in place, have done this publicly, I've articulated this also in Cabinet, is that they are revenue-centric. What do I mean by that? They make an assumption that the municipalities are collecting and simply refusing to hand over the money to Eskom, or essentially pay for their bulk purchases. We think that, we know that the problem is more complex than that. And I speak here with a great deal of authority, having been the other side of the fence, running a city. So we think that we must resolve the entire value chain. So if you look at a significant part of these municipalities outside the metros, we are sitting with a capacity problem. So there's been significant hemorrhaging of the technical skills in the electricity department because of those spaces are unattractive, they are unable to attract the right level of skills because of the incentives that they are offering. So we think that the first intervention is to capacitate those departments. So essentially that ring-fence them. They are well defined. If you have been in a municipal space, you'll be able to have an appreciation of what I mean. And then the second one is not taking into account the fact that as a result of lack of investment in their distribution and reticulation infrastructure, there's elevated levels of technical losses. So before you even downstream ask of them to pay, you have to resolve the issues of technical losses, and those requires significant levels of capex investments. But you look at these municipalities, they are illiquid, they don't have the right revenue base to reinvest in those assets. They are grant dependent, so you are not resolving the problem there. So whatever the solution you come with must make it possible for you to reinvest in those assets. And then the third area is the ability of municipalities to achieve what I refer to as completeness of revenue. There are suburbs that are not being built, not because household or consumers don't want to pay, but they are just not receiving that, including in the metros, by the way. So by completeness of billing, I mean everyone to be billed. Almost all municipalities are doing estimates, so it's not actual billing, so they are estimating. And then there are queries and all of that, people then decide not to pay. And then the third one is around the instruments for credit control, right? Because they don't have the technology installed, they are unable to do credit control. And then the last one is that there are households that are supposed to benefit from free basic electricity. We think that about 80% of these households are not getting that free basic electricity. So you need a technology platform that makes it possible for you to directly subsidize people and not go through the municipality. So if you look at how they get the support, those that are deserving, it's a grant from National Treasury, goes to municipalities, but it doesn't filter to the end consumer. So we think that you resolve all of that. And then there must be a carrot and stick. What are some of the carrots there? I have said in the municipality, once the debt is 90 days old, I can tell you it's irrecoverable. So all these numbers that we are showing you, and I was saying to the team, I mean, I can say this public, you are not going to get that money. Look at Malutia Pufo, Machare, 7 billion rents. You are not going to get it. I mean, with all your best effort. So what you need to say is that accept that that money almost is forgone, but protect your revenue going into the future. And if you come into this dispensation, then we extend that to you. And then look at the agreement we reached with Swan. They say, look, a big part of what we have to pay is interest on what we are owed. They say, but strip this of the interest, help us, we will pay the current account. So we can live with that dispensation. And then you say, if you are consistent over this period of time, then you can extinguish your debt. So all I'm saying is that is the totality of the above. So it's not a revenue-centric, it's just an appreciation that you get into a space and provide the full suite of services that are necessary for you to deliver an effective, if you like, electricity distribution function. And we had said to ESCOM, let's design that. Once we get to the right place, there's agreement. I'm sure we can go to municipalities. All of them are saying, no, we are happy that you can come in and help us. And of course, ESCOM, there's a tariff increase, there's a surcharge that municipalities levies on top of what ESCOM is. Once you have ring-fenced that income, ESCOM transparently, they take what belongs to them. That surcharge goes to the municipality. They are able to reinvest it back in social infrastructure and all other requirements of municipalities. So we're working on that. The details will come, but this is a very high level on what is on the table, and then we'll work it out and come back. So it's not an intervention that is treasury-led. It's an intervention that is sector-led. That's the point I'm making. And that's why we're having this kind of catastrophic failures in relation to the efficacy of the intervention, because we are resolving a wrong problem. It starts with your misarticulation of what is the problem statement. And I've said to the team, we think we know what the problem statement is. And then over time, first you stem the growth of that debt, and then you are able to extinguish it over time. And the kind of numbers that the CFO and the group CEO are referring to, they become more and more positive, in addition to addressing the issues of bypassing technology intervention. I think something we should have done ages ago, but we are here, we are accepting that going into the future is something that requires our collective attention. Thanks.
Thank you. Chair, do you want to say the last word before we close?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Chair. You can continue.
Hello?
Yes, Chair, you can continue.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anthony. So, to conclude, colleagues, just a couple of points I'd like to make. The first one is that we are not proud of announcing these results 9 months late. I can tell you this is going to be the last time that we are doing this as a team. We've got a commitment from management that we need to go back to the cycle of the auditing cycle, where we do things and we announce results at the right time. And there's a lot that we've learned over the last financial year, lessons learned, and we're going to make sure that it does not happen again. And I just want to apologize and thank you for your patience. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I would like to leave with you is that you will see us being very transparent as we move forward. If you look at the communication that is being done by the management on a weekly basis, how much we disclose information. That's just who we are. We are going to continue to be as transparent. And there's also the assumption that ESCOM is anti-transformation or is anti-reform. In fact, as a board and together with management, we are driving some of the changes that are being experienced in South Africa. The unbundling is something that we're passionately doing, and we're not against it. In fact, we know that we are very strong as a company, and we are looking forward to competition going ahead. So that's the second point I'd like to make. To talk of, you mentioned and you made a comment around the gender representation. We hear you. It's something that clearly as the board is a priority of ours. And I must tell you, when I look at the new people that have joined the company at an executive level, it shows that Dan and his team have listened to the board. This is clearly something that is a priority of ours. We also know that the turnaround has to be sustainable, and we keep hearing that in January we're going to be going back to load shedding. We have no idea where that comes from, and this is not something that is in line with our plan. We want to make sure that load shedding is something that is of the past, and we can expect that of us. So with that, I just want to thank all of the ESCOM colleagues, thank the Minister for all of the support, and we're looking forward to continuing to be driving the turnaround as we go into the next year. With that, I'd like to say happy holidays to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you for addressing the January scare, because I was going to address it. But having said that, I would like to thank all of our stakeholders that joined us today, media, organized business, our investors, our customers, members of the public, and our leadership that had joined us. Minister, I know you were preparing to have your own media briefing today, but you sacrificed that and prioritized us. Thank you so much. And with that said, Merry Christmas to you and your families, and may you see a prosperous 2025. Thank you. Lunch is served.